This former high school teacher has admitted she sexually assaulted 2 of her students. She entered a guilty plea to 2 counts of sexual assault involving former students that happened years apart. So let's take a closer look at how much time she could spend in prison as the state of New Jersey deals with a wave of child sex abuse cases involving educators. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. 37-year-old Julie Rizzitello is no longer a teacher. She's a former teacher, and she also has a new moniker, and that is convicted criminal for what she is admitted to doing to 2 of her former students in New Jersey. Rizzitello entered a guilty plea to 2 counts of sexual assault of former students after admitting to having sex with them, even apparently inviting one boy to her home. So, how did we get here? And even though we seem to talk about these cases more than we'd like, it's always shocking when a teacher crosses a line, or frankly just blasts past the line in cases like this, then admits to what happened. Rizzitello resigned from her position. She was an English teacher at Wall High School, which is on the Jersey Shore, little more than an hour's drive from Philadelphia, on July 3rd, 2024. It was just days before she was arrested. She had been with the school since 2013, and then it was revealed in court proceedings that the Wall Township Public Schools Director of Human Resources was the one to contact Wall Township Police after another employee reported it. And it appears that word of sexual contact between the teacher and student had started to spread because that student told some of his friends about what happened. Now, in the beginning, the Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office knew of one former student who was victimized by Rizzitello. But then things got worse for her a few weeks later after her arrest when another male student came forward to make the same claims. Now, according to an affidavit, between April and June of 2024, Rizzitello had sex with a teenager who was either 17 or 18 years old at the time. The reporting's mixed, in at least 3 jurisdictions: Wall Township, Brick Township, and the borough of Belmar. The teen told authorities that Rizzitello assaulted him multiple times, including in his car, and she also sent him nude photos. Now, just one day before she was booked into the Monmouth County Jail, Rizzitello asked the victim to delete those raunchy text messages. She was charged with 2 counts of sexual assault, witness tampering for asking the boy to delete the messages, and 3 counts of criminal sexual contact. She was booked into the Monmouth County Correctional Institution. The superintendent of schools sent out a letter to parents letting them know that Rizzitello was being criminally charged. And in the letter, she wrote, quote, "We recognize these matters have an impact on the entire school community, especially our students. I ask that you be mindful of our students' well-being during this difficult time. If you believe your child, or if you know of a child that is in need of support, please consider reviewing the mental health resources available on our website. As always, the safety and well-being of our students remains our top priorities as we navigate recent events." We looked up Julie Rizzitello on truthfinder.com, and we were able to see her charges on her profile. It's when you scroll down to the criminal history section on Truthfinder. Truthfinder is a powerful background checker. We partner with them here at Law&Crime. It helps us get details on the people who are involved in our stories. But even if you don't work in true crime, it can be an excellent resource to give you peace of mind because it's one of the largest public records search services in the United States. And with the paid subscription service, you get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. And right now, you can get 50% off your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/OTC. Once Rizzitello's arrest was announced, another former student came forward to report that Rizzitello assaulted him as well. And this one was back in 2017. According to that student, their so-called relationship lasted from 2017 in November to January 2018, and it took place at Rizzitello's home. This is a 37-year-old woman. So on July 16th, she went to court where she was hit with additional sexual assault and witness tampering charges. Now that Rizzitello has pleaded guilty, sentencing is scheduled for January 9th of next year, and the Monmouth Prosecutor's Office is seeking some harsh penalties. According to a news release on Rizzitello's conviction, the state said it plans to recommend a sentence of 10 years in state prison. They also want her to register as a sex offender, have parole supervision for life, and permanent forfeiture of public office. Wall Township Chief of Police Sean O'Halloran spoke to the Coast-Star newspaper after Rizzitello entered her guilty plea, and this is what he said, quote, "The actions of this former teacher represent a betrayal of trust, not only to the victims, but to the entire school community. I commend the courage of those who came forward and the dedication of our officers and partner agencies in bringing this case to justice. Protecting our youth is among our highest priority, and we will continue to work tirelessly to ensure that criminals are brought to justice to safeguard our residents and guests." Now, Rizzitello will learn her fate on January 9th of next year. It's not the only case, though, that we have seen in New Jersey recently, a high-profile case of a teacher allegedly targeting her students. In fact, it's not the only one going on in Monmouth County. A Monmouth County grand jury indicted special ed teacher Allison Haveman-Niedrich, a married mom of 2, on 7 counts in March of this year. She's accused of aggravated sexual assault in the first degree, sexual assault in the second degree, 2 counts of endangering the welfare of a child, a count of endangering the welfare of a child by manufacturing child pornography, another for possession of child pornography, and official misconduct. There was also a sentencing enhancer because Haveman-Niedrich was an employee of the school when she allegedly committed these crimes. Now, according to prosecutors, Haveman-Niedrich, who is a teacher at Freehold Intermediate School, was having sex with an 8th grade student who she was, quote, reportedly obsessed with. She's accused of filming the sex acts as well as texting the boy thousands and thousands of times. Body camera video shows her arrest in June 2024.
Good evening.
Yes.
Detective Hernandez, Freehold Borough Police Department. Is Allison home?
Yes.
May I speak with her, please? Now we'll talk to her out here. Thank you.
Hello.
Hey, Michelle. How you doing?
Hi.
Detective Hernandez, Freehold Borough Police Department. Detective Correa, Detective Hobbs. You know why we're here? No? Any idea? You want to move away from the house to
I don't
speak to
feel
her?
comfortable talking without my attorney present.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
We have a warrant for your arrest, so we're gonna take you in. Is there anything on you that you want to leave with your family?
No, my glasses come with me. Do I have medication that I need to bring with me?
If you take medication,
I
I
do.
will highly suggest for you to have someone get it for you. Okay, just give me a second.
I don't have a phone. It got destroyed, actually. I lost it today and got run over.
Haveman-Niedrich claimed her phone had been run over that very same day. Quite a coincidence, given what prosecutors say was on it.
I don't have a phone. It got destroyed, actually. I lost it today and got run over.
Okay. Just have them bring the medicine.
Okay.
Here, I gotta put you under cuffs, though.
Okay.
All right?
Joints are very fragile.
I'm not gonna hurt you in any shape or form. This is gonna go on gently. Right? Still good?
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Give me a second.
My husband's here with my kids.
Okay. Thank you, and I see your parents there.
Yeah, my parents are here. They're fine. My kids are safe.
All right. Do me a favor. Go like this.
I do have a lot of medical issues. I'm sorry.
Okay. No problem.
Outlet Jersey Shore Online reported that other teachers saw Haveman-Niedrich interacting with the boy inappropriately, doing things like rubbing his neck and back, touching his leg, describing the actions as, quote, flirty. Now, according to an indictment, the 15-year-old told friends that he was dating the teacher, but when confronted by police, he tried to insist he was actually dating the teacher's daughter and that her mom never did anything inappropriate. But the 25,000 text messages, think about that number, 25,000 text messages between the two showed something very different. His mom took him to the police station where he apparently confessed to what was going on. Haveman-Niedrich has been on home confinement since her arrest last summer. Joining us now is former sex crimes prosecutor Dan Shore. Thank you, as always, for being with us on Law and Crime and helping us kind of understand these really, really disturbing cases, especially in this one where she's admitting, and that's always just kind of chilling, where there's the allegations and then that's shocking, but then to hear a guilty plea, it just, for me at least, it just is always kind of this unsettling part of very difficult stories. The state is going for a prison term of 10 years. How likely is it that New Jersey would get that in this case?
I think it's likely that you'll see some prison term. I don't know if it'll be that full extent, but this isn't just a one-time incident with one person. You have the allegations that are now, they're not just allegations because the defendant has pled guilty, as you said, with two different students over the course of time, a long period of time, many incidents, including sending explicit images over text message. So I think that type of abuse of power when someone's a teacher and the other people are students, teenagers, and it occurs over time, it's with more than one person, you're probably going to see some type of incarceration, although you might not see the maximum or what they're looking for, but I'd be surprised if it wasn't some type of incarceratory sentence.
In one of the cases, so there's one from 2017 and then there's one that took place in 2024, and one of the victims was 18 at the time that it happened. And I could see people look at that and say, well, that's the age of consent, so why is this even an issue in the first place? Why would it still be a problem? And why is that person a victim? I think that's more importantly, why is this person a victim if they were 17 or 18 years old?
Right. Well, a lot of it is the abuse of power and authority for someone who's a teacher over someone who's a student. And that is really problematic because that is taking advantage over power dynamics. And we see that a lot in society, whether it's employees who have a supervisor who takes advantage of that power, or here with teachers, someone who's in an educational institution, you're supposed to be teaching someone and you're using that to have blurred lines of physical and emotional boundaries and taking sexual advantage of another person. So that is the significant part of this. If this happened outside the context of the student-teacher relationship, then you probably wouldn't see a prosecution here. But that is really significant that someone's going to school and this is a teacher who took advantage of at least two students.
Yeah, and you say at least, and I think that's a good way to put it, because she had been at this school since 2013. She resigns in 2024 after these allegations come to light. And then you have the student from 2017. How common is it in these cases where it's not the first time when the teacher is arrested?
I've seen a lot of cases where once someone reports and other people feel emboldened to report, there's a lot of self-doubt and misplaced self-blame among people who are taken advantage of by a teacher. And often people don't always see it as abuse. They think they're responsible. They don't want to get the teacher in trouble. But then when someone else reports, then other people come out and report also. So I think it's really common that once you have one reporting, other people may follow, and you can only be sentenced based on people, obviously, who have come forward. You can't base it on just conjecture about what's out there. But I know in my experience in investigations that I've done, if someone's taking advantage of another person when they have a teacher power dynamic occurring, often there are other people who can then come forward, and maybe other people will come forward for this case in the future. But certainly we've talked about other cases where you've seen multiple people come forward once they know that the allegations are public. There's also safety in numbers. People are really scared of retaliation and coming forward with allegations like this. And once they see someone else coming forward, people feel emboldened to also say, yeah, this happened to me.
And in this case, in the 2024 case, there were some raunchy text messages and some nude photographs that this teacher sent to the student. Seems like there was a digital footprint of this relationship. I mean, in these cases, when you have someone who comes forward and says, this happened, how do you go about investigating to make sure that it's not just a teenager saying something, but it's actually something that happened?
Right. Well, text messages, explicit images, those are a really strong corroboration that there was an explicit relationship, that there was some type of improper or sexualized conduct occurring. And now, I was a sex crimes prosecutor starting in 1998. So I've been doing this a long time. And back then we didn't have all this corroboration through text messages and social media and images that were sent back and forth with people. Now it's so common in any investigation that I do. I primarily work with colleges and universities doing sexual assault and sexual misconduct investigations. And you very, very commonly see when there's an ongoing relationship, communication like this that corroborates the nature of it, sometimes in very explicit ways. So that's extremely powerful evidence that every investigator needs to dig into. And it just didn't exist when I started my career.
How challenging can it be? Because you have in 2024 these text messages, these photographs that were sent, and certainly the word of the student also really matters. But then someone comes forward from 2017, and it was kind of a moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, that's almost a decade ago. It's just you don't think of 2017 as that long ago, but it was. And how do you go about investigating that case to make sure that person's story is told at a time when there might not have been text messages, and they don't have text messages now, potentially, to be able to prove this?
Right. People don't often keep their text messages from almost a decade ago, but sometimes there are other witnesses who might have seen the people together, even if they didn't see the worst of the alleged misconduct. They might have noticed that there was boundary blurring behavior, interactions between two people. Also, sometimes multiple people who are alleging misconduct by the same person have similar details in the nature of the misconduct they're alleging. And unless they got together and worked out their stories together, which is unlikely when people are a decade apart or almost a decade apart, that can be really significant. I've seen that in a lot of cases where people say that the person who is abusing their power was saying similar things or doing similar things. So those are types of ways that you corroborate it. And also part of it is just talking with the person who's arrested if they're willing to speak with law enforcement. And once there's multiple people making the accusation, it's hard to argue that more than one person is just making this up. Certainly that can happen, but it's less credible for someone to say that the allegations are fabrications when you have more than one person. They're spread out by years. They didn't know each other, for all we know from the public record. So that's all really powerful evidence for the prosecution.
And so she pleads guilty, and you still have a pretty strong sentence that the state says that it's going for in this case. What's the process of getting someone to plead guilty to these charges as opposed to saying, fine, we'll just go to trial?
Right. Well, the main reason someone pleads guilty is because they think they're going to be convicted and they want a lesser sentence. The most harsh sentences almost always occur after a trial conviction. So it may be that the defense said, look, we have two people accusing us. There's all these text messages. There's explicit images. There's probably not going to be an acquittal here. So it's the best strategy on the defense to plead guilty, avoid a prosecution trial, avoid having to have the victims testify in court and go through the possible re-traumatization of that. And often judges reward that with defendants to say, okay, you took responsibility. You spared them from having to go through this process. I'm going to give you a more lenient sentence. It's almost always there's some reward for a defendant for pleading guilty. Not always, and it still could be a harsh sentence, so it's not as if someone's getting away with something by pleading guilty. But our justice system has a strong incentive for people to plead guilty. As you know, most cases don't go to trial. Of course, the ones that go to trial are the ones that get the most attention because those we see in court and we can follow them. But most cases in the criminal justice system are resolved through plea bargain like this.
And I wonder too with that, because to go on the stand in any case is nerve-wracking. I got called for jury duty once and you had to explain yourself, and that was nerve-wracking in and of itself. But to be someone in their position and to face your accuser, that takes a lot. And sometimes I wonder with some of these plea deals, because I totally get why someone would not want to testify and relive that trauma, if that's something that can favor the defense, that's almost something the defense can weaponize in a case, knowing that the person would have to get on the stand, and that would be very difficult for them.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of prosecutions for sexual misconduct and intimate partner violence that the prosecutions are not successful ultimately because the alleged victim does not want to testify at trial for understandable reasons. And that's when I was a sex crimes prosecutor and I dealt with child sex abuse cases and other cases. That's one of the big challenges is getting the cooperation of the person through a trial, because also, it takes a long time to go to trial. So let's say the trial's a year after the arrest, and here we have some incidents that were many years ago. A lot of people who experienced sex abuse during that time have moved on or tried to move on, and maybe they're in therapy. Maybe they feel like they're trying to heal from this and then having to live it in court and be cross-examined and face the person who allegedly did this to them. That's difficult. So certainly defendants get an advantage from that, but it's also an important part of due process that people who are alleged to have committed sexual misconduct have the right to confront their accuser. That's in the Constitution, and cross-examine their accuser, because we do also have false complaints in our society, and that due process is essential. So I think it makes it tougher on victims, but it also gives important due process to the defendants, and that's some of the competing interests in our justice system that are at play, and those often lead to plea bargains like this, where a defendant will take responsibility, get some type of incarceration maybe, but spare the victims having to come to court, and it might be the best resolution for everybody.
And when it comes to a judge and the decision that they'll make in January about what her sentence will actually be, and there's times that a decision a judge makes in these cases are very controversial, and people will read the headline and be like, how do they only get this amount of time behind bars, or no time at all in some cases? What does the judge factor in those cases? Because I don't believe she had a criminal record ahead of this. Clearly there's 2 cases that she's pleading guilty to, but like, what will the judge look at that could almost work in her favor so she wouldn't get the 10 years that the state wants her to get in this case?
Well, certainly the factors that you just started talking about, lack of a criminal record, what has the person done in society other than this misconduct? Do they show that they're helpful to society? Are they generally in the public record following the law? That's important. Another major factor is victim impact statements. Usually, even though the victims don't testify, they have the right to submit a statement prior to sentencing with their opinion. That could be in writing, that could be spoken in court. And sometimes you see victims like this who say they want the maximum sentence because they were traumatized. And you see other people who say, this was extremely hurtful, but I've moved on. I want to give the other person a chance to move on, so I'm not asking for the maximum sentence. I've seen people who are victims of really egregious crimes ask for leniency on the part of a defendant because at this point in their lives they feel they have some level of forgiveness for them, and other people are asking for the maximum sentence. So I think those are both understandable reactions, but usually judges give a lot of weight, although it's not controlling, but judges often give a lot of weight to what the victims are looking for in a case like this. And if a victim is saying we're okay with a lighter sentence, often a judge will go along with that. But as I said before, just the fact that the defendant pled guilty usually means that they're going to get some benefit from that plea, which would be a less significant sentence than going to trial and having all the testimony happen. That usually, there's a reason why people plead guilty instead of going to trial, and that's usually because they're getting a reduced sentence.
And in this case, it stood out to me that the HR person for the school district heard, because the victim had spoken with friends and it started to spread throughout the school that something had happened. And we've talked about cases where the school district, it seems like they could have done more. It seems like in this case, you have this HR person that gets wind of this, then goes straight to the police, and then you see this. It seems like this is what should happen in these situations when this, even if it seems like it's just a rumor buzzing around the school, that this is how you want people in the school district to react in a case that nobody wants to happen.
Right, and that's a big part of schools looking into these kind of cases is what was the response. So it's good if an HR director immediately flags it, goes to law enforcement. Unfortunately, we've seen tragic cases where ongoing misconduct at educational institutions continued for years because people did not report it to the right places, and that is a major problem. So I think there's more education now in society, and organizations have more training on if you learn about something like this, you need to report right away. So that's great when they do it. But we see tragic outcomes where there are additional victims because people who knew about it earlier didn't say something because they were afraid of retaliation, or they just didn't know who to go to. And that's a problem.
And in your career, when you have the moment where you're sitting across, maybe it's in a room, you're talking about a plea deal, they have their attorney, or maybe they've just been arrested. At some point you were talking to a teacher who has done this. And there are just so many cases where it happens, and it just never makes sense. There's never going to be a reason that would be okay for it to happen. But what do they typically say about how they get to this point where they have crossed a line that no one should ever cross?
You know, a lot of times, unfortunately, I've seen victim blaming by defendants in cases like this, saying that, the victim was the person who initiated the sexual activity, even though that's not a defense when someone's a student and another person's a teacher, or if someone's underage in certain other statutory rape cases. But I've seen a lot of victim blaming, not only saying that it's their fault, but also saying that as a mitigating factor that, it's less serious because the person wasn't compelled to engage in sexual activity. They were willing to do it. And those may not be legal defenses, but sometimes people will throw that out there to try to get a reduced sentence, to try to make the crime seem less egregious. And a lot of it is also a defense attorney doing their job, trying to get the best sentence, the best outcome they can for their client. So that's one of the arguments that I've seen a lot.
I know I've asked you this question in the past, but it just, there's just so many cases of this where it happens. And is this, it's happening more, or is it because, you know, we certainly cover it more in the media, we're aware of it, and you see people, you know, I think of the text messages as well, that you're able to find out about these things a little bit more than maybe you did in the past. But I mean, is there a problem in this country now with teachers who seem to be crossing the line with students?
Well, it is a problem, but I do not think it's happening more than before. I've been doing this a long time. What I think has changed in a major way is that people are emboldened to report things more because we had the Me Too movement. We had other cultural changes where people see other people reporting this type of misconduct and people think, oh, I too can report this. Before, years ago, I think a lot of people just felt ashamed that they were part of a situation like this and didn't want to tell anybody. You also have an easier way to report things now with social media and other types of electronic communication, where before you didn't have that. You have more resources for news coverage about this, such as Law and Crime, where you cover all these important stories. That didn't exist several years ago. So I think there's a lot more mechanism for people to report it and for people to hear about these cases and understand these cases. But I do not think it's happening more. It is a severe problem, but unfortunately, it's been going on throughout the history of mankind that people in positions of power have been sexually abusing people who were under them in some power position. And society is evolving to try to stop that.
Yeah, and hopefully more of these cases, you know, they don't happen, but people do the right thing when they hear about it happening and report it to the police. Dan, it's always great to have you on Law and Crime. I know you have a book out. You write about your career, and you know, it's really important, I think, when we talk about these cases. What can people expect from your new book that I know is available now?
Sure. My new novel, it's here. It's called Open Bar, and it actually mirrors a lot of what we just talked about today. It's about a high-profile sexual misconduct scandal at a school. It starts with an HR director reporting allegations that she uncovered, and it deals with the behind-the-scenes wranglings, both political considerations, school politics considerations that people often don't see in these cases. So people can check that out or find me on Substack, and I write more about these types of issues.
Former sex crimes prosecutor Dan Shore. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me on. Great talking with you.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.